This is the Brew World Order Podcast.
Happy New Year and welcome to the Brew World Order Podcast. My name is Curt, and if you haven't subscribed yet, well, it's a new year, so you might as well start it off the best decision you might ever make. This is episode number 35, and in this episode, I sit down with Curt Cameron of Thomas Hooker Ales and Lagers in Bloomfield, Connecticut. Curt talks to me about how he became the owner of Thomas Hooker, how he's tried to perfect the best-tasting CBD Seltzer, and he tells us about the charity event that he held to get dogs adopted when they had full kegs of beer not being sold due to COVID. Well, just like the other Curt Cameron we all know, we all go through some growing pains. But when it comes to the business aspect of them, Curt really seems to know how to handle them. Well, maybe we can all learn from Curt that the best is ready to begin as long as we got each other. And maybe it's time I remember which Curt I'm talking about. Well, in the meantime, you should sit back, crack open a beer, and enjoy the podcast. Hey guys, I'm Curt. This is the Brew World Order Podcast, and today I'm with Curt Cameron of Thomas Hooker Ale and Lagers in Bloomfield, Connecticut. Back in 1996, the Trout Brook Brewery was established to create beers for the Trout Brook Brew Pub. After changing hands numerous times, Trout Brook Brewery became a manufacturing microbrewery with a new focus on distribution. In 2003, new management had come in and fired up the brewery again as Thomas Hooker Ales and Lagers, naming it after the most famous of the Trout Brook beers, Thomas Hooker Ale. It wasn't long until Curt Cameron and his partners purchased the brewery in 2006. Soon afterwards, they converted it from a brew pub to a distributing brewery, moving it to Bloomfield in 2007. Since then, they have become one of the most notable and recognized breweries in not only Hartford, but all of Connecticut. And Curt is here with me today. Curt, thank you for being here.
It's my pleasure.
Appreciate it. You wound up being a owner of basically a beverage company. You started a New England beverage, and it was basically a distribution company. You sold wine, liquors, all that. Can you tell us a story about how you became owner of Thomas Hooker and Ales and Lagers?
Yeah. I'll just give you a quick sort of once over on the professional history, if you will. I've been sort of called a serial entrepreneur in that, I was for years in the software business. That was really what my college education was all about. So worked through a number of different software companies that finally ended up out in Silicon Valley, worked there for a number of years. And once I had young kids, it was time to stop being on planes 3 days a week and sort of settle down. So I took some time off and built our first liquor store. And we built some pretty large stores. And one of the things that we were really focused on was beer, because beer was really starting to come up when Dogfish Head was getting famous and all that kind of good stuff.
Right.
After a couple of years, we sold those off. And I jokingly say I needed a job. So one of the attorneys that I used had said, "Hey, what do you know about Thomas Hooker?" And I was like, "It's a good little brand, but they don't do it much with it." And he's like, "You want to go buy it?" I go, "I don't know. Is it for sale?" So long story short, we end up taking the company over. And that sounds a little lofty, but not really, because it had one employee left. It was pretty much running out of the back of one of the defunct brew pubs. But it had a good brand following. And so we ended up taking it over. And like you had said earlier, moved it to Bloomfield in 2007 with an eye more on production. And so we got out of the restaurant business altogether, started brewing and packaging beer in Bloomfield, and we've had a nice sort of systemic growth over the last 12, 13 years. Very
nice. So can you tell me what were some of the major things that you did for this company that turned it into the brewery it is today?
Yeah, I mean, we've been at this a long time. We're like the old guys in this business. And
right.
It's interesting. A lot of times people say, "Hey, what are my long-term goals in the brewing business?" And I laugh a little bit at that, because this is such a dynamic industry. What was working back in 2007 is completely different than what really works, today. So we've gone through all sorts of twists and turns and pivots along the way. We were, mainly making, 2 or 3 different types of beer back then. Now I think we make 20 to 25. The styles are much different. We also, really had a focus on customer experience, meaning that people could come into the brewery, they could sample the beers, we would give them tours, they could actually, try some beers off the tank. So that's a really important part. So one of the things we've invested on substantially, in addition to, really just upgrading the brewery with the latest and greatest technology, is that customer experience. So we've got full restaurants. So we've kind of gone back to the restaurant model. So we have full commercial kitchens in both of our locations, and people can come in, sample the beers, but also sample some great food along with it.
Right. So now you have 2 locations. You have the original one in Bloomfield, and you have the one at the Colt, which you opened up in 2018. But there was also a third. There wasn't.
Yep.
There was a third. That was in Mohegan Sun.
At Mohegan Sun, the big casino. So let's talk about those. So when we originally opened up in Bloomfield in 2007, we bought a building, about a 12,000 square foot building, and we took over just the back part of it, and we had a tenant in the front. As time sort of went on and we expanded, we finally moved the tenant out. We took over the whole front of the building and really built a full-fledged, tasting room. Then we subsequently bought the 30,000 square foot building next door, and we've got some of our production over there now, and warehousing, and we even have a dog rescue. So that's the Bloomfield location.
Right.
In 2017, we actually opened up Thomas Hooker at Colt, and what we did down there was we built a test brewing facility. So it's a smaller 3-barrel facility that we can brew test recipes and make sure we've got something we like before we make the equivalent of 15,000 beers of it up here at the brewery.
Right.
That's just a cool location because it's a 650,000 square foot sort of mixed use location. We've got 200 residential apartments. There's about 1,500 people that work in the building. It's just riddled with history of Connecticut. It's actually where the revolver was invented. So we've got that facility. And for a while, we ran a facility down at the Mohegan Sun Casino. They had, years ago, started a brew pub. And it sort of fell on hard times because the beer coming out of there was marginal. So I sort of made a play and said, hey, guys, I'll reopen it under our name and create something kind of cool for you. And we did that for a few years, and it worked out really well. And then, casinos are always changing, and they made some changes to the facility. We sort of said, hey, it's been great. We're gonna go. And so that was a great experience as well. So, yeah, we've been all over the road. Right.
Yeah, and I swung by the one at the Colt. It was a very cool location. Unfortunately, when I showed up there, it just happened to be closed that day for like some wine tasting or something.
They have a huge wine tasting event every year. So, we really enjoyed being there, and.
Right.
It was a good experience.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's beautiful at the Colt. Yeah, it's beautiful.
I'm sorry. Yeah. It's just the management down there is just fantastic, and it's like I said, it's just riddled with history. So
yeah, it's beautiful. Recently, with the whole COVID situation, I don't know basically how hard you were hit by that, but how did that affect your business plan?
Well, so. Because we're sort of diversified, right? We have restaurants, we have production brewing. It's been harmful on the restaurant side of the house. We were required to shut down for a couple of months, so that was particularly painful because we had to lay off 25, 30 people.
Right.
And then once we were allowed to bring them back, we had a pretty good summer, to be quite honest with you. We're fortunate that we have nice big patios at both locations, and we put a big tent up here at Bloomfield, so the summer went well.
Right.
And, I guess I'm like so many guys that, now that it's getting cold, it's put kind of a hurt on the restaurant business. And now with the uptick in COVID, a lot of people don't want to come out, but we're trying to pivot. We're doing a lot of takeout, and, we'll survive it because of our production business, which frankly has done phenomenal during this time. People kept drinking beer.
Yeah.
But it really forced us to go from 30% draft and 60% or 70% cans to 100% cans, which of course is another issue, right? There's not enough cans out there. But,
right. Yeah. That's what I hear. Yeah.
Yeah, but we've been very fortunate. I've got to say, our production business is actually up this year. So
awesome.
Life could be worse.
Yeah. God bless. That's awesome. So, can you just briefly kind of tell me a little bit about how you had some kegs sitting that couldn't move, and you kind of turned the idea into a little charity?
Breweries, we're distributed through the Budweiser distribution network, and they've been phenomenal partners for us. over the, I think since '08 or '09. And they came to us and said, hey, look, we're getting killed. There's all these poor restaurants out there that want to send back all the draft beer that they can't obviously serve. Can you help us out with that? And like a lot of breweries that had the ability, we said, yeah, sure. Well, we'll take half the hit on that with you, and we'll take all those draft beers back. The problem is it's still good beer, right?
Right.
And so we thought, you know what, let's try to do something creative. So we had a draft beer adoption program. So here at the brewery, we also have a 6,000 square foot dog rescue. And
awesome.
We thought, we'll kind of do a parody on, you remember the old Sarah McLachlan commercials where it was like In the Arms of an Angel,
yes.
and they show all these sad pictures of dogs. So we did the same kind of ad, but we did it with draft beer.
Okay.
So the pitch was, come give draft beer a good home or a temporary home, and then we donated the proceeds from that sale to the dog rescue. So the tagline was give draft beer a temporary home and give a dog a permanent home. And so what we did is we got a local dairy to donate a bunch of gallon jugs, and we just started filling up gallon jugs with beer, and we sold gallons of beer for $10. So it was a heck of a lot better than dumping it down the drain. Although I will say that gallon milk jugs are not the best vessel for beer. People were pretty cool about it and drank it quick, and I think it was a win-win for everybody.
Yeah. I find that 2-liter Coke bottles are a little better.
Those are a little thicker.
Yeah, right.
Let me tell you,
that's what I used to put it in.
Yeah, anything that expands and contracts like that is a marginal vessel to put beer in.
Right, for sure. So recently just read also that you started making CBD Seltzer?
Yeah, that's been an incredible growth area for us. So
yeah, I wanted to know how does that venture working out for you and your company?
Yeah. Well, I think really well, and I think for a couple of reasons. Number one, when we started looking at that market, we went out and we bought a bunch of stuff, and we were kind of surprised that a lot of them didn't taste very good.
Right.
So we're pretty good at making things taste good, and we have a handful of different beers that we flavor, and we have some sort of proprietary techniques for making sure that things blend well. So we started playing around with how do we make a seltzer that tastes good, and then the other piece of this thing is. The magic is not so much in the CBD, because we use a CBD isolate, so there's no THC or anything like that.
Right. But
it's the nano emulsion. So the nano emulsion is really what allows an oil to emulsify in water. So these nano emulsions essentially are really, really small particles that will blend with water. And we do extensive testing on all of our CBD products to the point that you can scan a code on a QR code on the can. It'll take you directly to an independent lab result for every single batch of CBD we put out there. And you can see that if we say there's 26 milligrams of CBD in the can, you can see that independent lab result, and it proves it. And, frankly, it's usually more than that.
Right.
Whereas a lot of guys are just putting stuff out there that, frankly, we've tested. And somebody will say, oh, there's 25 milligrams in a can, and we've tested it comes in at 19 or
right.
15 or something like that. So, that whole sort of ion quality is what we really think people are appreciating, and that's why they gravitate to our products, because we prove that what we say on the can is what's in the can.
Right. Very interesting. Very cool. So what was something you never thought I know you were in the beverage industry prior to selling beverages and whatnot. But actually being a brewery owner, what was something that you never thought you were going to have to deal with?
I was always amazed at how hard packaging was. It's one of those things people think, you push a button and the beer goes into a can. But one of the things I always preach to my guys is you can make the best beer in the world, but getting it in the can and getting it in the can so it lasts on the shelf is the really hard part. So we've really invested heavily in testing. So we actually can test every batch of beer, and within 3 hours we know if there's any sort of precursors to bacterial infection. Right. And if there is, it goes down the drain. So we have PCR testing here at the brewery that actually runs it through a centrifuge, puts it in this magic machine, and it comes out and tells you, do you have lactobacillus, pediococcus, or anything else that could potentially, give off flavors in that beer. The the other thing is we've just invested heavily in really, really good packaging equipment and QC equipment that will check for air counts and will check seams on the cans. And, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars of equipment that, it's hard to buy, but it's what makes quality product and consistent product. And I think the consumer, as they get smarter and smarter about beer, is really starting to appreciate that.
Right. Yeah.
So I always tell people probably the best compliment I get is people will come to our brewery and we have so many different types of beers. At any given time, we might have 20 plus beers on tap.
Right.
And I'll get the comment that, I might not like every style of beer that you make, but I can tell that every style is well made. And I think that's a testament to my brewers and my packaging staff that they're really doing a good job back there.
Yeah. One of my favorites personally is Super Duper Double Citra.
Yeah, we just made a triple of that.
Yeah, I just saw that.
Scary one.
Yeah, I can imagine. I'm sure it hits hard. Yeah, I love the packaging and how it's got like that double dare look to it. Very cool. Very cool.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't either. I don't know what I'm talking about either.
Yeah.
So what qualities would you say that you possess that make you a good business owner?
Well, you're making the assumption I'm a good business owner, first off.
Well, I would hope so. I mean, it seems this way. It seems this way.
The one thing that I hear from employees is that, I never expect anybody to do something that I wouldn't do myself. So, in addition to, doing interviews and sitting at my desk, I'm back there working with the guys. I'll also, I jokingly say, I'll outwork anybody here. I mean, now granted I'm the business owner, but, I put a lot of hours in here, and I think that, when you expect guys to work hard for you, showing them that you're not afraid to work hard as well, I think they appreciate.
Right. Yeah. That hustle.
Yeah, and I have a high expectations of my guys. So, I'm if you're a guy that wants to come and just kind of cruise, this is probably not the right spot for you. So I'm proud of who we have working here and how hard they work. Yeah,
it's a beautiful thing. So who would you say inspired you the most in the beer industry?
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. Before I got into the beer industry, I'll be honest, I didn't know a lot about the beer industry. I wasn't a home brewer. Everybody always asked me, were you a home brewer with a dream? And I'm like, yeah, not really. Right. My dream was really more, I was always in more service industries, and I wanted to try to grow a brand. And that was what the big draw to Thomas Hooker was. So I don't know if there's any one person in the beer industry that inspired me. I think just, people who I respected in business sort of inspired me because, you work hard, you kind of come up with a game plan, and you try to follow it. And, so I wish I could say, it was, any one person that started a long time ago, but I'd be lying if I said, it was somebody.
Right. So, I mean, you definitely strive for success. You want your business to be successful. Was there a defining moment for you where that kind of like sticks out when things were just like, yeah, things are going in the right direction, and like, it just kind of sticks out?
It's kind of funny. I would actually almost say that one of the moments I remember most was actually the opposite, the negative. I remember we were probably doing this for three years or so, maybe 2 years. And, we had run through our original investment money, and myself and one of my main partners, we were sitting on the side steps outside the brewery going, Jesus, what are we going to do? It's like, this just isn't working. We're not selling enough beer and on and on. And it wasn't long after that, we were able to cut a deal with the AB distributors in the state. They bought us away from our previous distribution, which is what was really killing us. Right. And that was the turning point for the company. And, the next turning point was, we were having a pretty good run, and then all these other little breweries started popping up, and we weren't the cool guys anymore. And we sort of had to regroup. And I still remember we said, all right, spend sort of, our last, bunch of money. We bought a canning line. We spent $250,000 on a canning line. we rebranded, and we had a couple of New England IPAs that just hit at the right time, and it saved the company again. And so it's really a series of up and downs, of successes and hard times that maybe have made us a little bit more just more experience in dealing with the peaks and valleys of this industry.
Definitely humbling. No doubt.
No, absolutely. I mean, I always have a saying that you become smarter by learning how little you know, and you really gotta look in the mirror sometimes and say, hey, are we doing it right? Or you don't want to follow guys, but you definitely need to look at what's out there and sort of make logical decisions along the way.
Right. So, I mean, dealing with all that and constantly, I'm sure you constantly kind of want to be there and make sure the business is doing well. How important is a mental break for you? What's the importance there?
It's interesting. I'm sort of a workaholic, and if I have a mental break, sometimes it's I step away from the management side of the desk and just go out on the floor. I mean, I'm still the guy that they go to for really hardcore canning line issues. I love building things. So, we do a lot of our own work. We do a lot of our own plumbing and electric and all that kind of stuff. So
right.
I'm a guy that likes to get his hands dirty. And if I have a sort of a mental release, it's that. Going out there and, stepping away from the management and going out and plumbing a new water connection in, or fixing the canning line or something along those lines.
Right. So, I mean, you've been doing this since 2007, right?
Yeah.
2006?
Yeah. 2006, yeah.
What would you say has been the biggest change in the industry since you first got into it?
Well, I think it's just the sheer number of breweries. When I got into it, I think there were 600-700 breweries. Now there's 6,000
right.
breweries,
yeah.
right? So there's not too many industries that you can see such exponential growth in the number of competitors. Now, thankfully, what's happened is that the beer market's changed substantially, right? So there's a lot more sort of acceptance for craft beers. And I mean, I think that's the biggest change. I think the other thing is back when I got into it, everybody sort of had an eye on distribution, and I think that's a bad model now. I mean, you can't start a brewery today and say, hey, I'm going to just go out and get a distributor and they're going to distribute my product. I think the right model now is, you make your beer, you have a tasting room, and so, people, I think that a lot of small breweries that start up now are more in competition with their local restaurants than they are with me.
Right.
So because they're really taking that retail dollar as opposed to, trying to go after the distributors and get mind share within, the AB distributors.
For sure. So this is one of my favorite questions. What was your gateway beer into the craft beer world?
Oh, that is a good one. So my gateway beer, I think, was Hefeweizens. So I remember when I graduated college, I backpacked across Europe, and I had this beer in the Hofbrauhaus in Munich, Germany, and it was a Hefeweizen, and a real German-style Hefeweizen, not like an American style.
Right.
And I just loved it. So, some of my favorite beers even today are like Schneider Weiss or Eyinger, Weinstefan, and beers like that. And
right.
so those were my sort of non-traditional, beers. Of course, way back then you couldn't even get them in the United States. But, the good German-style Hefeweizens were the ones that were my gateway. Gotcha.
So what does the future look like for Thomas Hooker? What's next for your brewery?
Oh, that's a good question. It's funny. We've almost from the ground up rebuilt the brewery. I mean, I'm talking, we cut the floors out, repitched them, did all this kind of stuff.
Right. We
can fit maybe 3 more tanks into our facility. It's balanced really well with our canning lines. So, I'm apprehensive. I like the size that we're at right now. Everybody always wants to get bigger and bigger and bigger, but breweries are essentially a series of plateaus, and we're really sort of plateauing from a capacity perspective where we are right now. We own all of our buildings and all that. So, our next step, I think, is really maybe additional retail outlets. We're looking at doing another, satellite location, and then, we'll see what happens from there. It's for us to build another brewery, I mean, that's, I'm apprehensive about spending, 10, 20 million bucks on another brewery at this particular point. But who knows?
Yeah.
We'll see what happens, right?
Yeah, we'll see, especially after this next wave, and hopefully it doesn't shut down everything again. So we'll see how that looks like,
Yeah, no, absolutely. But yeah, I mean, I think, where we are right now is, and I say this to my guys, is like, I'm not looking to get a lot bigger. What I'm looking for is to increase efficiencies. I want to increase profitability, and I want to increase just the ability for everybody to kind of kick back and enjoy the passing of time a little bit more. So we're not always running and working so hard.
Gotcha. So if somebody came to you and they asked you for advice on opening their own brewery, what advice would you give them?
The first thing I would ask is, what's unique about what you're going to try to create? I always think breweries they've got to have sort of a soul, right? They've got to figure out who they are. It's like everybody thinks that their beer is better than the next guy's, but I got to tell you, right now there's such phenomenal beer being made out there that, just good beer is not enough. You need sort of a story. You need a cool location. I would tell people that you definitely want to do the tasting room model, because you're going to have a really hard time getting any sort of mind share within a distributor. So you're going to want to try to sell as much beer as you can direct to the consumer, because that's the highest margin way to do it.
Right.
So create a cool tasting room, a cool tap room, keep an eye on quality, and try to be unique.
Gotcha. And did you have a funny story for us?
So the one story that people ask, did you, you obviously took over a brand that was already in existence. What was kind of like your aha moment about the company? And I say, well, I actually have a funny story as to why I shouldn't have bought it. And that was when it was Trout Brook Brewing in Hartford. Myself and my wife, or she wasn't my wife back then, she was my girlfriend, we all went out to dinner at the Trout Brook Brew Pub. And as we're sitting there, my wife kind of nudges me and she says, "Look at my plate." And there was actually a cockroach running across her meal. And I was like, oh my God. And if you would have told me that night that someday I would own this company, I would have said you're crazy. But fast forward, a number of years, and I do. And I'm happy to say we don't have cockroaches running across our food anymore.
That's a great thing.
That was a classic.
Yeah, for sure. So I have a little segment called Quick Fire 5 quick questions, beer related.
Okay.
Ready?
I don't know.
All right. Well, here we go. One of your beers that you would recommend someone try?
Raspberry Berliner Weiss.
All right. Favorite brewery other than your own?
I like Little Red Barn Brewing in Winstead, Connecticut.
All right. Favorite style of beer?
It depends on the food and the mood.
Okay.
If I had to pick one, I would say Hefeweizens.
Hefeweizens. All right. Last beer that you drank that blew you away? Could be yours, could be another brewery's. Doesn't matter.
Actually, the last beer that I drank that blew me away is we did a fresh hopped beer in conjunction with an actual hop farm out in Washington that we visited this year when we were out there, doing our hop selections. And it's a beer called Cultivate. And I was amazed at how good it came out, because I've had a lot of fresh hopped beers, and I was just so proud of the guys because this beer came out phenomenal. And to have the actual hop farmer and the guys, the distributors that shipped it out, all be like, this is one of the best wet hop beers we've ever had. I was proud, and I agreed it was a phenomenal beer. So that's why that's probably the best beer that blew me away lately. Gotcha.
And you have one keg of beer to hold you over for a 2-week quarantine. What beer are you choosing?
Wow. Let me think about that. I think I might go with the Raspberry Berliner Weiss.
All right.
Yeah, because that's something that everybody enjoys. It's refreshing. Doesn't get you too hammered.
Right.
It's a good all-around beer.
Perfect. Well, Curt, that's all I got for you, man.
Oh, well, that's great. Those are some great questions. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, man. I'm Mike Curtin for the Brew World Order podcast here with Curt Cameron from Thomas Hooker Ales and Lagers in Bloomfield, Connecticut. Thank you very much. Appreciate it, man.
Mike.
Hey, guys. Thank you so much for listening to my interview with Curt Cameron of Thomas Hooker Ales and Lagers in Bloomfield, Connecticut. Whether you're passing through, live in the area, or just visiting a friend nearby, you should definitely check him out. Give him a follow on social media, too, while you're at it. Every other Sunday, I'll be releasing a new episode, so subscribe. You'll never miss it. Also, check us out on social media for updates on the podcast. I'm Mike Curtin for the Brew World Order podcast. You stay safe out there.